and it is interactive with you. So we are streaming on Twitter, on Facebook, and YouTube. And if you are on Twitter and you want to get involved, something interesting comes up, or just want to comment, just use the hashtag MathsChatLive, which you'll probably see appear on the timeline right now. So I'm hoping to do these every Saturday. So we've got another one lined up next Saturday after the Teach Meet Maths Icons, and the following, and so on and so forth. So I will jump on. I should introduce myself as well. I'm Atul Rana. I'm an online maths tutor, and I'm based in London. And I've got two lovely guests here, Dave and Rhiannon. So we'll just go for a quick round of introductions. Do you, Dave, first, and then Rhiannon.
Hi, so I'm Dave Tushingham. I am a lead practitioner in a school in Bristol, working for the Greenshaw Learning Trust. Just really passionate about sort of reading, literature, and just learning more, and just really welcome this opportunity. So thank you so much for having us on today. I will shut up now, and I'll pass on to Rhiannon.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Rainbow. So I'm school improvement lead for maths for the Greenshaw Learning Trust. So that's kind of a part of my role, is a bit like a director of secondary across our schools for the Greenshaw Learning Trust. So yes, I'm very lucky. I'm sort of an outward facing person to be able to work with all of the different teams across our schools and help to support them as best I can.
Fantastic, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm probably just going to show some of my ignorance, being a tutor who's not sort of involved with mainstream education much. So I'll ask really silly questions for on my behalf, on for everyone's behalf. Starting with your very successful book club. So what is the book club? What happens? And maybe you can even talk about the Greenshaw Learning Trust in that.
Absolutely. So if I could start on that one, we basically have a club which we've invited participants to come and join, where we just talk about literature. We talk about how we link literature into the classroom. And it's born from an idea that Rhiannon took, and we wanted it to try and fit the sort of real ethos of what we believe reading should be all about. And for me, working at the Greenshaw Learning Trust, I've really learned a lot about outward looking, trying to be that 10% better and 10% braver, and just trying something and seeing if it can work, and how can you improve what you do, and having that growth mindset, as well as social justice, as well as allowing everybody and enabling everybody and including everybody in what we do. So this book club was born, and we took pieces of literature which meant something to us within the classroom, and we produced this sort of structure to go with it, where we would look at 2 books per term. One would be pedagogical, so we would look at the literature that underpins the latest ideas behind teaching and learning. And then we would look in our second session to link it to mathematics, to link it to our own classroom practice with both maths teachers, and we wanted to see what it would look like in our subjects as well. So we made this book club, and we sent out extracts to our participants, and we would sit and we would talk about what the literature meant to us. And a really important feature for me is that the extracts are very small. The conversation is organic, so we sort of just talk about our ideas, and there's no wrong idea. So this idea of sort of like the Mary Meyer book of high challenge, low threat, this idea that we want to really think about our teaching and learning in detail, but we want to do it in a way where everybody's idea is valued, everybody learns from each other, and that was an important feature of what we do. We were very lucky then to have Peter Math to approach us and ask if he could be a part of the club, and we ended up getting some quite amazing experts to come and join us. And Mark McCaw said it really well in his first ever session. He said, if you want to learn, then surround yourself with clever people. And we really feel like we've done that in our club. Brennan, is there anything you wanted to add to
But it's been just such an incredible journey. So it started because reading the literature around what is going on and using the evidence to inform what we do is a big part of our identity as a trust, as schools, and as individuals. So when we were in the first lockdown, I was a member of senior leadership team at 5 Acres High School, and the deputy head there, Stephen Derry, who's now head teacher of Henley Bank, started a book club. It started off with the senior leadership team, and then it grew to anybody else in the staff body who wanted to be involved. And I just really enjoyed that opportunity to hear other people's opinions, thoughts, reflections about something maybe I had looked at before or something that I hadn't. And it introduced me to something new. And then when I mentioned it to Dave, and we thought, well, why don't we give it a go for next year and see what happens? We put together a program of books, the 12 books that we'll look across the year. We delayed the launch because we thought schools would have other things to be thinking about in September. So we launched in October, and we were very fortunate, actually. So there was a little bit of traction on Twitter. I think I'd mentioned something about a weekly trust-wide newsletter, and Lucy Comans said, oh, could I have a little look at your newsletter? I'm thinking of doing one. So I shared it with her, and she noticed a mention in there about our book club. And she said, is it just for Greenshaw Learning Trust staff, or can I join? So then it became GLT and friends. Lucy was our first friend. And then we started opening the door to anybody who wants to come. And we launched in October. By our third session, we had Mark McCourt as our guest, and that was at the beginning of December. And we now have almost 150 members with some incredible people with amazing ideas across different phases. So we've got primary, secondary, further education, and a range of subjects as well. Just because diversity around the table of ideas is what really helps to add richness to what we're thinking about also. So it's just been an amazing journey, one that we hadn't expected, but that we've just embraced. And I suppose Dave said it himself, because we're in an outward facing trust that are open to new ideas, and that we're doing it together, it's enabled us to give it a try and just be 10% braver and try and make a book club that's manageable, meaningful, and purposeful for everybody. We have people who are able to look at the entire text and read around it. We also have people who have been really pressed for time, and they turn up not really having had the opportunity to read it, but everybody hopefully is able to take part should they choose to, and get something from the session. And I think the first time we recorded it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but as with everything, we're used to that now. So yeah, that's our book club.
That's fantastic. I mean, reading books is just a phenomenal way of CPD. It's and one of the things I find difficult is really, just like everyone else, is actually the time to do it, to actually read. And we know from being teachers ourselves that when we put a structure in place, like we're doing with remote learning, is like we expect the people, like Woody Allen has this famous quote, 80% of success is just turning up. So if you make that space where you just turn up, and what you've done effectively is you made this space for people just to turn up. And even if they haven't read one week, I'm assuming that they feel like, oh, well, there's other people talking about this particular book, so I should have a little bit of read at it. And then you're helping them form this habit, and putting them in touch with people who are really into their books. So you kind of produce this online virtual space for this to happen. That's fantastic. And could you give just a concrete example of a certain book that been discussed either recently or is popular, and what sort of came up from it?
I think we've got some of our favourites that we might have. We've had 3 recorded sessions so far. But yeah, go on, Dave. What would your opinion of that be?
Well, the thing that I've enjoyed the most is so Peter Mattock was the first person to approach us, and we looked at visible maths, and we were able to really talk about some of the manipulatives, because that's my real weakness in teaching. So if we start going into a detailed conversation about manipulatives, I think I should probably turn my screen off and pretend to freeze, because I don't feel particularly skilled there, but by listening to that conversation for an hour, I really felt like I just learned so much more. but more importantly, I got the passion to go and find out more, to go and play with MathsBot, to go and find out what I could do with Crucian air rods, to find out how I could use double-sided counters to support my students. I had a conversation with my sister actually just a couple of days ago, who was somebody who wouldn't necessarily have had the best maths experience going through school, but really wanted to learn and was very willing. And I talked to her about these different methods, and I was able to sort of bounce them off. But I was really engaged. I was really wanting to understand how that method could help the students. And so just being a part of it was a bit of a catalyst to find out more. And during those sessions, we had a separate session for the Boolean Maths Hub where we recorded with Peter Mattock. And I remember it's really stuck with me, an idea from Dawn Dyer about examples. And I was all over the definitions in this book club session. I was looking at how the definition of example can help us to understand that this is what we're doing compared to a technique. And this was my takeaway. And I listened to Dawn talk really cleverly about how, well, maybe examples aren't always the first thing that you do. Maybe they could come in during the middle of a learning episode near the end. And it's just, the reflection was just so powerful. And I've really sort of taken that away and thought about it again and again in my planning. But my first reaction to that was, oh, I was wrong. My takeaway wasn't very good because I just heard Dawn talking. And so I was sort of really reflective about that. And that then I think has also been a catalyst for the ethos within our book club, that we look to ensure that every single point of view is adding value. And I was able to go away and go, no, my idea was a good one. I've shared with somebody else and somebody else has taken from that too. So I've got to say that the Peter Mattock session itself, although every session just brings unique value, so it's really hard to sort of choose, but that for me was, as I said, a catalyst.
Yeah, his session, it just turned me into an excited maths again, where I wanted to get my notebook out and learn, like when I had my Joe Morgan mathematical methods book for Christmas last year. I got my own notebook back out again and my stationery and just working through and learning from it. And it was different things from the Peter Mattock session. I'll talk about the other ones as well in a moment, but there were questions being asked in the chat and on the screen for how would you roll this out? How would you introduce it to a department? And other people who had done that in the session were able to add value, put something in the chat. We've got people that contact me and say, look, I really want to be involved, but I only want to sit there and listen. Is that okay? Cameras turned off, they're on mute, and they are then able just hear and absorb and reflect on what everybody else is saying. And that is absolutely fine. And we have so many people now who join us that we've never met before, but then our members, well, they're friends of our book club. And if anybody wants to join in, they just unmute or raise their hand, and I try and facilitate an organic, a few dodgy segues at the same time to try and bring everybody in and keep the conversation flowing. And the other thing about the last one with Peter Mattock is one of the questions being asked in the chat. Then when we've stopped the recording, one of the other participants shared her screen and did a bit of live CPD there and then for somebody else, and the conversations carried on afterwards. I mean, David Didow was fantastic, and he was great to listen to. And some of the feedback from that was actually from our members and our friends, that they enjoyed listening to a non-math specialist and their point of view, because we can get subject blindness with what we're looking at and when we're thinking about it from other people's points of view. So that was really quite poignant for some people in that way. And then with Mark McCourt's session, our first one, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better first guest at all. I still have a huge smile when I think about that one. It was him just, I found it really reinforcing and reassuring to hear somebody who is so intelligent, so respected, so well read, then giving suggestions and advice and supporting the conversations from everybody in the room, regardless of how much they did or didn't know about the book that they'd read, or mastery, or a learning episode. And the way that he he handled and managed that. And he talked about the best way to help to support, well, I'm paraphrasing here, the best way to help to support students with them framing their thinking about problem solving is if we model it for them. And remember that every step matters, and we explain our thinking and our reasoning and we demonstrate it. And I thought, actually, at the moment, with the way that things are working, that's more important than ever. So yes, I have sadly loved every single one.
No, it's fantastic. I'm another Mark McCourt fan. It was the first live stream with him actually. He jumped on, and one of his things he said is in his book even is that learning is a social endeavor, and when you bring people together, it's almost like your multiplicative effect, to use a maths term, is it's almost exponential. It's like it's not linear at all, and you get this kind of ping back between people, especially teachers, right? We have you're talking about a combined experience probably between the three of us, maybe like 50 years of teaching, or and you get this second order or intelligence ping back happening between people, and that's really fantastic. So some of the chatter has started already on Facebook. Are the recordings available, Mr. Day? Yes, they will be on all the platforms. D. Greg Dunn says, hallelujah, who would have thought that the benefit of lockdown and having to shift online would be the ability to share best practice and good ideas to a wider audience. Definitely, yeah.
I've got, we have our recordings available as well, and so I can share there on our Greenshaw Learning Trust website. It's only just been added, so it's free for anybody. I can share that link afterwards. It's on the CPD tab, and you just go GLT and Friends Book Club, and you'll see the recording from Mark McCourt's session, David Didow's session, Peter Mattick's session, as well as the pre-record we did for the Boolean conference as well. We will make every single one of our recordings free for anybody who wants to use for their own purposes, as prompts for CPD, anything like that at all. And if anybody wants to be a member, they can just email me, Rhiannon Rainbow at greenshawlearningtrust.co.uk, or DM me on Twitter, and I will add them. And then they're on the email list, and they can come along. They get invites directly into their inbox. They can sit and listen. They can engage. They can listen to it afterwards. It's entirely up to them, but they get access to everything there as well. So our recordings are all there. And I need to thank Mary Myatt for that, actually, because she was the one who helped to give us the nudge. So when we had our pre-meet with her, that was just such a profound meeting. It was meant to be about 15 minutes. I think we kept her for about 45. So an incredibly intelligent lady who gave us so much to think about. And she said, just share the recordings. Don't worry, it doesn't need to be perfect. And so we did. We just share it, and then if anybody wants to, they can come and join us. We were 10% braver. That gratefully, thanks to talking to her, because it's a scary thing to put it out there, but as long as people are getting something from it and we're able to support them with what we're doing, then that's what it's all about.
I love that quote, be 10% braver, and it's I'll just echo that back to Twitter, actually. If you're out there, use the hashtag MathsChatLive, put your thoughts, put your question. I know we got a couple of people already. It's not just about us here, it's about conversations getting started between you as well on Twitter, and that will inspire us while we're here live and on the recording. So yeah, be 10% braver, step up to think what you want to do. Just go for it. I didn't think I was going to be live streaming like this back in March 2020, but I felt I had to do it, so I just did the 10% brave thing and did it and just ran with it. And yeah, just to go back to the book club and implementation, which you talked about, is there another example of something you can show that you talked about the manipulatives, Dave, where you learned about using them on MathSpot. Is this something that you took away from a certain book and you implemented it in your virtual classroom, or maybe even in the real one, that's kind of paid off because of the interaction in the book club?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's so many sort of little takeaways. What I might do just first of all is just talk about how the structure of that sort of goes towards having just one takeaway from each of our sessions, because for anyone who wants to do something similar, what we've learned through this process is the idea of just like students in the classroom, the cognitive load for teachers, the retrieval for teachers. We're humans. We learn in this particular way, and novices will learn different to experts, but we're all people, and so as you go through the book club, what we have at the end of the session is one takeaway. So there's one thing that we all write down and we share in the form of a sketch note, so that we can then look at other people's takeaway and we can start reflecting on that. But for me, in David Didow's session, it was about how a novice does learn differently to an expert. So how I might teach one class a lot of procedural knowledge, information, going through models, examples. I then learned outside of the Maths Club from an excellent lead practitioner we got in our department that's joined in January, Una, the idea of covering up the your turn part of a worked example. So I would put on the board a worked example and then a your turn, but for the cognitive load, just to cover up the your turn, so they're really concentrating on that worked example, something I took back straight away to my classroom. But then the idea from Mark McCaw's session of problem solving, and I've been looking at GCSE problems and thinking about, surely you can model that in the same way, and so doing a worked example, doing a your turn, the Craig Barton model, which I'd learned from his wonderful book, and then I would go through this variation style, just change one aspect at a time with this problem solving problem. And I thought I had that nailed, and I thought this is great, this is working. And talking to Mark McCaw about what true problem solving is, about the idea of being okay to struggle, being okay to be in that classroom and not understand something, and wrestling with it, he said, and for that to be okay. And the idea of giving students problems that are maybe a couple of years below what they're currently learning. So maybe 2-3 years ago they'd seen this material, and that's where you can focus and put the attention to the true problem solving. So those are my particular takeaways from some of my sessions, but everybody else will have very different takeaways, and that's okay, and it's just great to be able to sort of learn with these experts, and they are, I mean, they're the sort of, they are, I want to say, the heroes of our book club. We simply organise materials and bring people together, but the clever ideas that these academics bring to the table are just, we're just so grateful for it, and to be able to be in their company and just to learn, it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I must admit the work that we've done on book club and what we've learned, and you mentioned the model from the Craig Barton book there, which I think is echoed quite a lot across the schools in our trust. We've used that to help inform our remote curriculum as well. So the idea from trying to keep things minimalist, if we're thinking about sort of Ollie Cav's work there, and dual coding, and not having distractions and loads of animations on our slides, and keeping it really focused on the learning and what it is we want students to attend to, and being aware of cognitive load theory. And we have, so all of our lessons on for our remote curriculum have that worked example problem pair. We use Craig Barton's diagnostic questions as our exit tickets for them, and their multiple choice and their self-marking, so that students get that immediate feedback. And when we were doing Google Forms, they were also sort of, there was a support cycle built in it as well. So if a student put an incorrect answer, then it would give them a prompt and then give them the opportunity to try it again. And it was actually, I was trying to upskill really quickly to help support the work we were doing with that. And I did a few of the Seneca free teachers CPD courses, because that gave such a nice interactive overview, and it put me back in the position of a learner again. So, okay, so how are our students learning at the moment? What is it like when it's intelligently designed and you don't have a teacher who's setting each of the tasks, which is what Seneca, Bedrock and Sparks are really good at as platforms at the moment. And then from that, it introduced me to additional authors as well, and some of them we've got on our list for this year. The Michael Childs craft book, there's the work on there from Kate Jones for retrieval practice, mathematical methods book, and all of those other things as well. And that gave me the introduction to even more so how learning from all of these different sources can help inform what we do, and then looking at different ways that we can use that and appropriately, so it can hopefully have impact, but also help develop staff. Because that's one of the questions we've had is, okay, we're in lockdown, what do you do about supporting staff and CPD and developing teaching and learning in these times? And it's through something like a book club where people can come along from any end of the spectrum, from any subject, any phase, and hopefully take something away from it. But also recording yourself teaching something where you're really focusing on your modeling and explanation. And I think it's Emma McRae who pairs those up in her book, Making Every Maths Lesson Count, because it's really hard to distinguish in maths between the two of those. It's your modeling and explanation. And then John Mason talks about the use of examples. So then it's not just, but also not just examples, exercises. So the specific questions you choose in that. And for the majority of mine, I go to the variation theory website every single time, because the way that those lessons are structured is fantastic. So that opening of a door for something new, that I hadn't had to record lessons before. I was an absolute novice. I'm still very much learning at the moment, but it just meant, okay, what is, I considered it as a case of what's out there. I need to find out as much information as possible. And because there is so much out there at the moment now to help us to do that, it sort of snowballed into what we've got now and what we're hoping to build on it with, really. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. I mean, the resources. I've been teaching online for nearly 10 years, and the resources that were out there already for teaching online were phenomenal. I mean, I was tagging John Corbett, and saying, "Oh, I've just used your thing to teach someone in Singapore today," or Johnny from MathSpot. This is like 3 years ago. So all the stuff, like some of the stuff, was already pre-made for online learning anyway. And I gradually saw through the years that the physical textbooks started becoming online textbooks, and I was seeing some of my tutees didn't know how to use their own these portals. What's the Firefly is one of them, and I would often tell them, like, do you know, like, you've been given revision material by your teacher there. So like one of the first things is actually to show them how to use their portal. And all of this was online anyway. It was already asynchronous and online. So because it was there already, like when the time came, some of these resources, variation theory, I've been using that one as well. It's fantastic. Example problem, I literally copy and paste that in my online sessions. Like I was doing that as soon as the website was out 2 years ago. It's like made for me. I don't even have to think, like copy paste. Here's me, your turn.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And Corbett Maths is another favourite go-to of mine, because there are so many. Everybody has their favourites, but Corbett Maths, variation theory, diagnostic questions, those websites are just such a fantastic gateway for really rich resources. So yeah, and it's one of the things that, so we've managed to put together now, thinking about lessons that are out there. People are doing live lessons, they're doing asynchronous lessons, they've got a blended approach. So we've, for our team, and the way that we've been sort of helping to support schools and students, and also developing staff as well with their CPD, we've got over 1,000 maths lessons now that have been recorded and that are available on our website for years 7 through to 11, and across a whole range of subjects. We've got a higher and foundation stream for each year, and we also have an access stream for Key Stage 4 and an express stream that runs across them, and they were all done by Dave. That was fantastic, just where you can really look at stretching and extending. But each of those are, it's just all about the maths. There's no wizardry, there's no storytelling in the same way. It is focused on the methods, the explanations, and trying to really strip it back so students can enjoy being successful in their maths. And also, as teachers, it helps us to develop what we're doing. There's a question by Mary Pardo on Twitter, if I may, Dave.
Yeah, go for it.
So this, and Atul, sorry. So this will be a really nice prompt, I think, for something else that we're hoping to develop. Dave, do you have, or plan to have, any follow-up sessions in which you come back to talk about what happened in your lessons when you tried out ideas that had been prompted by your first discussion?
I think that's probably taking us towards our idea of a Maths Club Mini. I'm not sure if the name maybe needs changing there, but we are. I mean, it's something we've been doing for just a few months here, and we're, every time we do a session, we take something away and a way to build. So we've branched beyond maths. We're now looking at the primary phase as well. We're looking at introducing books on coaching and sort of going beyond some of those sort of standard secondary maths teaching texts. One thing we're looking to try and do is to take the sessions that we're recording and then to involve a wider team to be able to take those recordings away into a smaller group, where that group can then talk about in a similar model, in a similar way, talk about the literature and have their own takeaways and have their own mini discussions around the pedagogy that's been taught. So absolutely, it's something we're planning to do. It's something that's evolving and building as we go. But please do also, Mary, if you've got any thoughts, ideas on how we can make that 10% better. We're learning, and we want to sort of be able to share and collaborate and get those ideas so that what we make is genuinely supportive and productive for the people involved. So thank you for that. I hope that's answered that all right.
No, that's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for asking that. Yeah, Mary runs the Tuesday one's maths CPD chat that I've been part of. So yeah, if anyone else has any questions, anything that comes up about the book club or joining the book club, I know Dee Grigden has been asking. She just wants links to everything. We'll put everything. Yeah, links to. We'll gather them. Of course, there's so much value in all the content you've created. Just the recordings of the book club chats will be amazing. Okay. So yeah, I think we're kind of segueing nicely into remote learning. I know the trust has done stuff on remote learning that you'd like to kind of share as well. So if you just put it out there, see what's worked, what's not worked. Yeah.
Oh goodness! So it has been just an extremely interesting process of learning, I think, from being absolute novices right in the beginning. And it was just the idea. So we are a trust of schools. We have a shared services team, and we have a bit of additional capacity as well outside of a single standalone school, possibly. So it was very early on, I think around March time, where I had a Saturday call from Ben Parnell, who's he is our director of secondary across the trust, and Joe Ambrose, who's our director of school improvement, as well as a couple of other head teachers and other people. And we were thinking, okay, so what can we do looking forwards to try and help? Because we are going to have some of our smaller departments might have difficulties with staffing if somebody is unwell. If we have students who are in school, out of school, what can we do? Because you can have live lessons, but if you have reduced capacity, or if there are difficulties with internet connection, then there are challenges to overcome there. So we thought we'd start a project of producing a menu of asynchronous lessons where they're pre-recorded, and that started with them being shared on YouTube with Google Forms, self-marking low stakes quizzes and exit tickets. And we've got a variety of subjects there, not just maths. There's English, Spanish, French, science, key stage 3 and 4, RE, PE, geography, history. We even had music lessons that were happening during the summer in that first lockdown. And then we found that there was so much richness and value that we were able to get from that. We thought we'd take the project further. And as well as not just working with the excellent staff we have within our trust, but working with excellent staff beyond as well. And I think that maybe that's one of the lessons to have learned from it, is if we'd have involved and looked outwards earlier, then we'd have gotten so much more from it as well, just seeing how other people do things and what they're able to add to the table. So we now have on the website over 4,100 pre-recorded lessons that are available for anybody to use. It doesn't store anybody's names or anything like that, and there's a directory. So the Greenshaw Learning Trust website, go to the remote curriculum tab, and you can, there's a hyperlink in there for a directory. It's a live directory, so when new things are added, it updates. So you want to keep going in, and it forces you to make a copy, so you can't compromise the original. And then you can just select from that menu. So yeah, I think we added about 100 more lessons yesterday, particularly in science. So there's over 4,100 lessons there, and there are over 1,000 maths lessons too, and we're adding all the time. There'll be nearer 5,000 when we're done on this phase of the project. So we wanted to produce something for our own schools and our own teams to be able to use, and we thought, well, whilst we're at it, why not make it so anybody can use it? So when we had it on a YouTube channel, the day that we transferred it across to the website, which is where it is now, it had over 1.25 million hits, and it had been accessed in 120 countries worldwide. And those are the bits of data and numbers and figures that to help to keep you motivated and thinking, okay, so somebody out there is finding it useful. We can keep going with this, and we have, and to make it easier, because clicking on YouTube and clicking different links for Google Forms, it's quite cumbersome, especially for some students who are doing it on a mobile phone. It's just not so easy. So we've had a really big push on our project recently of migrating every single video and the questions from the Google quizzes onto our website, so it's much easier to access there. And it's the same website to get the CPD videos as well on for the GLT and Friends Book Club, the sessions we've been doing with We Are in Beta. We have on there for students the Ivy League lectures we've been doing recently, which is where at the moment we've got universities coming in and doing talks with our students to help give them different ideas. We've had Birmingham University and Cardiff University recently, and then we record them and put them on the platform. So if you weren't able to be there at the time, it doesn't matter. If you want to go back and listen afterwards, that's okay, you can. If your internet cut out halfway through, please don't worry. It is all on there. So yes, there have been so many lessons learned in the course of it, but it's been an incredible journey. And it, as a trust lead, it's given me a fantastic opportunity to work in a different way with colleagues that I might not normally have the same amount of contact with. So we've had student teachers produce lessons, phenomenal work that they've done to help them to improve on their practice. I've had extremely experienced practitioners like Dave working on it, heads of departments. It has helped me immensely to develop my own teaching. And especially in a virtual environment now, it meant that geographical location wasn't a barrier to work together on a project like this. And I think that has just been a huge benefit, because normally if I want to go and work with one of our schools in Croydon, for example, Orchard Park, it's an 8 or 9 hour round trip. But now we can hook up a meeting online, we can do a remote project together, and everybody can benefit. So now we're all used to having virtual meetings and doing it this way. I think it's working much better than in the beginning. It was just a challenge for people to find that opportunity, that quiet place at home or in school to be able to work like this. So just sorry, there's so
No,
much
it's
going on. It's really exciting.
this is absolute music to my ears. Like, I've been doing this online for a while, and I had a vision in my head that, when technology and online banking was new, it took 10 years to adapt. Online shopping was new. So I just thought, I had this vision in my head, this will happen someday. I don't know how long it'll be. Maybe it'll be a decade or 2 decades, because I saw the technology, I saw what's been doing, and it's happening now with the Greenshaw Learning Trust. You're clearly trailblazers. You have, like, I'm sure people will just like see this thing and they'll say, I want to work for the Greenshaw Learning Trust, or maybe you do something online and they can work with you virtually. But it really is, and I have to say, like, really, it's phenomenal for any teacher who's doing anything to help remote teaching work. It might seem quite intimidating that some people are doing live lessons, some people are like got this very intricate setup, but anything anyone is doing to keep it going is a learning experience. And what online does, and what you've clearly done as a Greenshaw Learning Trust, is realized it's actually much more beneficial. Teachers are naturally very giving people, so like, if you found something that's valuable, it shouldn't be just kept within us. We need to share this, so because this is almost like a combined responsibility for us as educators. And I can tell you, like, from my own learning, when I went online a few years ago, it was just to like reach my local London students, but within a few years I started getting students from all over the globe. And I've been using this phrase from my like engineering days, and doctors use it, this kind of doctors without borders, or engineers without borders. So like, for me, we'd already, like, you're essentially where we're reaching this teaching without borders, and CPD without borders. And we're just at the beginning of what's possible. This is like an exponential growth, the way networks work. And by putting out that content out there, I can tell you another one of those sort of Mark McCourt quotes. He says, education is the UK's 5th largest export, and there are people in other countries that value British education far more. You cannot imagine how much more they value it. They see it as a really sophisticated, elegant, no nonsense way. Like, this is one of our legacies. Like the schooling system, the public schooling initially was like public schooling systems that were set up as boarding schools all over the world, eventually became schools. So we have this legacy of education that is still very strongly prominent in a lot of the world. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East and in India, and my dad, I had an Indian nationality. I hadn't lived in the UK, so my dad purposely sent me to a British school in Nairobi in Kenya, because he knew how valuable it is. And I keep telling this to like teacher and tutor colleagues, you have no idea how the very fact that you have a British accent is going to be liked by someone in Midwest in America. Like, they're just going to say, I want to learn English from someone from England, from London, like, with that accent. It's just, even just something as simple as that. So really, I think you're just at the beginning of this Teachers Without Borders thing. It's just going to get better and better. You'll probably find you have this flexibility of CPD across departments. Just from my own little bubble world of teaching, I've tutored students in all sorts of situations that they have been ill, they're at home, they're homeschooled. In one case, I was beaming directly to a student who's got like some medical issues, so they're given 1 week off, or 1 day off a week from school, and they take tutoring from me. But sometimes they end up in hospital, and they're really diligent, so I can just reach them directly in hospital and have a session with them, because they really want to learn and they're well enough. And we just don't know what's possible, but it's a lot more than people think it is.
And absolutely, that's one of the things that help to motivate us as well. Is that means that if we've got this bank it'll be 3 terms worth for all of those subjects. So it's quite a phenomenal amount. So it's an entire year. So you should be able to take yourself through an entire year for year 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now, we don't teach every single aspect of the curriculum because we know it'll take a little bit longer with some of the aspects of the maths, some of the math topics in maths, to be able to teach that as well as we'd like to remotely, because I'm a big person for however much technology is out there at the moment. If you watch any of my videos, I'm there with an exercise book, and my visualizer is just focusing on my exercise book and my modeling on paper there. So I'm explicitly demonstrating to students and modeling to them at the same time how they can clearly communicate and lay it out in their books. So it's not all fancy technological wizardry. I have cut it right back to as you said earlier, just trying to keep it simple and focus on what we're doing. But that has meant that for students who maybe have been poorly, unwell, homeschooling, they've still been able to have access to these lessons and the resources for what they would have had if they were in school that day or that week. It means that we've got students, if for whatever reason, if they are having support behaviourally, then they are able to still access quality education at any point and have a personalised programme as well. For CPD, if we're going to have that heated discussion around what methods are we going to use as a department, you can put up one of our videos now and say, okay, they teach it that way, or that person there has taught it at this point that way. What do we think about that? What approach are we going to have as our preferred approach across the department, maybe? And it helps to depersonalize it when you're not putting your own methods up there, because that can be quite a heated discussion in departments. And there are so many ways that these pre-recorded lessons that can be used for anybody. And that's why we thought, well, don't just keep them for ourselves. If they're there and we need to be able to access them easily, then let's just open that door to other people needing to access it as well. And I must admit, I think one of the most surreal experiences for me was I went to one of our schools, Homely Park, when they were still open, before lockdown, obviously. And I was walking around the maths department. They were in their own separate building at the time. So I'd walk around the maths department, see all the maths lessons going on, and you can see that consistency between them and the high level of challenge and worked example problem pair, and the students are doing their deliberate practice. And then I walked into one room and I thought, well, have they got a new maths teacher in here? And then the person who was walking me around told me, he said, oh, I hope you don't mind, that's one of your videos up there. And then I realised that what they had is they had somebody who was a non-maths specialist covering a lesson due to staff absence. But they were able to then select from the menu of videos the appropriate one for that class to still have a quality diet for their maths lesson that day by a subject specialist up on the screen. And because it mimicked so closely to what they have in their department anyway, that's another way that they were using it. And I thought, oh, fantastic idea. How much easier is that? Because then the person can pause, they can play. We go through, each of the videos goes through modelled examples, and for the questions that are in the independent practice as well, we'll pick certain ones. Sometimes we'll go through them all. Sometimes we'll just go through specific ones that we think would make a certain point to help to support the students in their learning. But that was another way. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. And when we reached out for other people to be able to say, would anybody else like to come and join the team? As you said yourself earlier, Atul, it was like people can say, okay, I'm interested in seeing what the Greenshaw Learning Trust are doing here. I might give it a try. So I had a couple of people contact me and say, I like what you're doing. Can I come onto the team and then see what it's like? And then we get to know them, they get to know us. And the networking opportunities are just fantastic. And it's just been amazing, hasn't it, Dave? It's been just such an incredible journey for us, this whole process, just these last few months.
I mean, a lot of what you said there in terms of that central, I think I can offer a lot in terms of being a lesson writer here as well, in terms of the quality of the CPD. It's been the single best piece of CPD. So if anyone's watching this and wants one takeaway from this hour, it's to go and record yourself quietly somewhere, teaching an aspect of mathematics, watch it back, and then reflect upon it. Because being able to do that, I wrote about 100 of these lessons, and the difference between lesson 1 to a lesson 100 is incredible. And so there'll be little errors in there, and there'll be little things which maybe aren't the best way of doing things, but it's that learning journey as a professional, which has just been outstanding. I'm just reading a comment on Twitter as well, saying that my favourite medium of teaching is a document, camera and a piece of paper. And I couldn't agree more. Just pointing that camera, yeah. There it is, the visualizer.
It transformed my teaching.
I know. The first time I saw it, I was a little resistant. I was like, oh no, I'm not sure about this. And it's just been phenomenal for taking away that cognitive load, for being able to really focus what you were talking about. I forget whose quote it is, but the idea that if you're learning, if you're talking about something and the students are listening to you say one thing or do one thing, then that's an opportunity that you're not using for something else. And so the decision that you make through those explanations is so important and so difficult. The more I know, the more I realise I don't know in terms of the way through that I want to teach. Fractions, decimals, percentages. When do I want them to be selecting their methods? When do I want to guide them in that? When do I want to instruct them to use a method? When do I want to support them in making their own method selection, for example? And there's so much you can learn just from that CPD, from that recording of your own teaching, I think. Which is, I want to just come back to something with the Craig Barton website, because I've found that one of my actionable steps has been to take those resources, but then to make them yourself, again, as a part of a CPD, but also if you know your classes and you get to know them better and better, the sorts of misconceptions they might make, to be able to then almost predict, to adapt, and then to have a set of questions that work for the individuals in front of you. They're great resources, and then you can make them, sort of tailor them, I think. And I think it's important to do this, to tailor them to the actual classes you have in front of you. That's been my actual step to really sort of improve that process, and I've learned that through the lessons that I'm doing, and I just really enjoy being a novice. I've really enjoyed sort of being at that stage where I don't know and I'm about to learn, and I want to just get the information, and now I want to be able to use that, become that expert, to start to generalize in terms of the way I teach, and to pick those specific examples. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I think you said about the Greenshaw Trust and how inspiring that sounds, and I really want to sort of confirm that for my experience. I've really felt I've been able to flourish in terms of understanding how to teach better, because that accountability is an intelligent accountability. It's not just an accountability. It's done with a feeling of a genuine low threat, that you go away and you look at something you could do to make your teaching better. And as a lead practitioner, I've learned more in 6 months there than I would have learned in 6 years of the role, because lead practitioner is somebody coming to you and saying, right, how do you do this? But I am just like any other member of staff there, and they have a process within the trust, which I believe is also in the Leverage Leadership book by Paul. Let's try and make sure I pronounce his name right, Van Brix Antonio. And his book is sort of talks about this idea of a developmental drop-in. So once every 2 weeks, what we will do is we'll have somebody coming into our lesson to come up with this one actionable step, and we'll have that conversation together. Everybody gets that opportunity. Everyone gets the opportunity to learn and to further their practice. And I just think that by being able to buy into this low threat way of learning and developing, it's just been a fantastic experience.
It's for me, it's really rewarding when some of the people who were original lesson writers, a large number of them, so from the summer phase, continued into this next phase as well, because they felt that they will, from all sorts of, so we've got lead practitioners like Dave through to NQTs and other schools as well, who've just learned so much from it and like that opportunity to develop. I mean, there are some truly cringeworthy moments in my videos. There really are. If I could re-record them all again, I would, because they will never be good enough. But I do things like, and none of my mistakes are intentional. Quite often I keep them in there. So I'm modeling for students that you're not always expected to be right all the time. It is okay to go wrong. And this is often what it looks like when you do. So there are post-it notes everywhere. The video will stop. It'll start again. I'll say I've made a mistake. And there was another one of the things it did is it helped me realize that actually some of my explanations and my approaches for teaching, the pedagogy I was following, actually wasn't up to scratch, because I'd rely so much on what I was able to do live in a room and to respond to the learners and use feedback, responsive teaching to be able to improve what I was doing, that when it came to something like factorizing quadratics, I really did need to go away and look at that and do a better job. So my factorizing quadratics lessons, I remember, took me a few weeks, because I thought there has to be a better process for this. It has to be more systematic. I was doing it too intuitively, because that's the way I'd been taught, and it's embedded, and that's part of my nature. So this has forced me to improve my own practice. And then in being that novice again, it helps me to have those conversations with other people I'm working with. So when I'm working with somebody who's a first year Teach First, we can walk alongside each other when we're having a discussion about subject pedagogy, rather than me just standing in the front and telling them how it's done, because I really don't know how it's done, but I can talk about my experiences so far. And I think that's the next part of the discussions that we're really having now across our trusts within our departments. And what recording yourself teaching forces you to do is really consider the method selection that you're using as a team. And now our departments have really kicked forward with this, and that they are looking at developing their own methods booklets, for example, that give the preferred methods across the team, that then students will know, staff will know, support staff will know, other subjects that have aspects of mathematics in them. So we've got mathematics across the curriculum there as well. And the work done by the staff at Blaze on that really has been at the forefront really of the trust, because we had the fantastic Josie Shelton join us a little while ago, and she brought so many ideas with her. And that's the best thing, is we can, with being virtual and with being open and outward facing, we get so many other people's ideas from beyond our trust that help inform what we do, and just keep making us 10% better. 10% better every single time. I really don't have the answers, but I'm so willing to listen to what other people have got to say and to improve what I'm doing to support all of the other teams that I work with as well. And the best part of what I do is I take the really good bits from different schools. And what was the first book we did in book club, Dave?
Yeah, so Ron Berger's Methods of Excellence, because we just felt that it was for me, before you start to go into any of the pedagogy, it's about building a culture, and that we picked a small extract just to talk about the culture.
Because I really like the way that he said it. This was my takeaway from his book, which I found incredibly profound, especially in a role like mine, when I work with lots of different stakeholders in different schools and departments, is that people often think that there is a silver bullet, that there is a checklist. If I do these 10 things, I will automatically get better. That's not what we do. But what we do is we turn up with our toolbox, and we have a conversation, and we talk about the different ideas, and then we start to piece together what might work best for you and what you might want to put into place. But each of those needs to be tweaked and adjusted. And I suppose sort of coming back full circle with book club, we try and have that so it's that organic experience for people. That to begin with, we have our prompt, we have the pages that we're going to focus on, the bit of pre-reading, and I've got quite a short attention span, so that's why Dave usually keeps it really nice, quite short and focused. So we've got a few pages that we focus on, and that's the prompt for the conversation. But then from there, everybody's got their own toolbox with their own skill set, and they're all able to add to the collective one, and it happens organically. And with different people in the room, and Dave's usually there trying to be that that little bit of an awkward outsider to throw in a different idea at the same time. But we found quite often recently that the momentum of the discussion in the room just, it keeps moving itself forwards now, and we're able to sit back and listen and add to our own toolboxes with what everybody else is able to put into it. So no, it's just so much going on. It's great.
There's so much incredible stuff. I'm just going to read out a few comments. The chatter has started, so if you're on Twitter right now, just keep talking to each other. Use the hashtag MathsChatLive or reply to us if you have a specific question. It's great to see this interaction. I'll just go them chronologically. You can take them up anytime as well. I'll just have a. Yes, Rachel Ham says, I agree with an amazing idea. I think it'll be great CPD for teachers and teacher educators alike. I think that's referring to the video. Only one of the good things about the pandemic, Mr. Day, build a collaborative approach. Yeah, that's what people are sharing lots online. I think Mary's got another question.
I really like Mary's comment there, because I've actually gone and grabbed this book. This is where I'm looking for that one. That is the Bible for me, for thinking about how students reflect and how we can get them to articulate their reasoning. And so questions like what's the same, what's different, those sort of just looking for what's changed within a question, looking at the boundaries examples, sort of the why it works and why it doesn't work. And so there's in Craig Barton's book, there's a list of prompt questions in there which I would use for that. Certainly wouldn't say that's it then, because there's lots of mathematical reasoning conversations that would need to build on that, and there's certainly a journey, and it's certainly something I'm developing in my own practice. But yeah, I definitely would be going to there through some of the purposeful practice for that one. I really like that question.
Yeah, and the Craig Barton books underpin the sort of trust-wide CPD prompts and calendar that Dave has developed, that we share across the trust as well. So each term there's sort of different prompts and ideas and suggestions to try and help to support the work that's being done for departments, for insets, for those who are sort of non-subject specialists, recently qualified teachers, and all sorts involved. And so often we go back to, every single time, Craig Barton, and his podcasts are pretty much always on my trust-wide newsletter, because he started me very much on my journey with exposing me to the different voices and the different ways that people were framing what they were looking at, and looking at how we can extrapolate from what people are doing outside of maths to what we are doing in our own classrooms. So that's just such a common thread through what we do. And anybody who's a member of Book Club, they automatically get the link to the Padlet that has the Trustwide CPD program on it, as well as all the Book Club as well. There's some really nice comments there. I'm trying to find the one again. Mr. Day said, get better faster. Need to get myself a copy. We've got here that Rachel Helm has said it would be an interesting research project as well. Now that it really would, wouldn't it? And that's in response to, sorry, I'm still quite new to Twitter. That's in response to sort of watching the video extract and looking at the CPD we can get from the Book Club and stuff, I think, as well. So I'd really like it if she could add more to that, to help us to think about how we could frame that and look at those opportunities, or for other people moving forwards, because that sort of piqued my interest there.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about, like, to reassure people who are making video content creation, essentially. I mean, I made my first YouTube channel in 2006 as a musician, and like the first content I put in there was absolute crud. I mean, it was like using these handheld video cameras that you'd have to re-record onto your sound card and then upload. It would take like an hour, and now you can just do it on your mobile phone and uploads it immediately. But I just keep telling, like, my tutor colleagues who are interested in making videos is, first-hand videos are just going to be crud. Just get the crud out of the way. It'll be like 10%. You're going to improve. Just get it. And then it'll become so natural and organic. And that's like, people will find it, people who connect to it. And then I started my tutoring video YouTube channel a couple of years ago. Again, like the first few are just stiff and awkward, but it's just going to be the case. And I really liked your point, Rhiannon, that reality, when you teach people, you are going to be making some mistakes on the spot. I have that with my tutees sometimes correct me. It's like, oh, it's like I'd say, oh, I'm just tired of tutoring. It's like it's 9 o'clock and you're in New Zealand. It's morning for you, and it's 9 o'clock for me. So it's just I just tell them yeah. But and the more organic and real it can be, the more it actually connects to people. It's like that's exactly the way it is. And I've got
my
this.
daughter. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my daughter, she's in year 11 at the moment, and so the idea of her mum helping her with her maths is just a no-go area. So that's why I picked up, and I wanted to run on the Key Stage 4 higher course this year, because I thought, okay, these are the questions that my daughter might ask me. So if I produce these videos, I can help to support her with her maths, because she's not going to ask me. But what she does have great pleasure in is watching some of my videos and then sending me a little image of her on her phone. Mum, you've made a mistake here, and she'll circle it and she'll send it to me. But I'm also not precious or worried about what I've done in that sense, and I'll share it with my team. I think I even put one of them on Twitter. I said, look, here you go. I often make a mistake when I am doing some algebraic proof, and then I take out that factor at the end to prove that it is a multiple of 2, for example. I will often forget to take out the factor of the final component in the polynomial. But it doesn't matter. People are so forgiving and appreciative now that it is okay to be real, to be fallible, and to keep learning. Sorry, Dave. Sorry.
I was just going to add to that, because as to when you say about getting the crud out of the way and how it's okay to feel like that, it reminds me of our first book club session with Ron Berger's Ethic of Excellence, where he references Austin's Butterfly, and we're on our first draft. This is one of the first times that we've gone and had this a conversation at this level. I have a massive imposter syndrome. I am looking at all of the CPD that I'm writing. They aren't my ideas. It's just my own personal organisation of other people's excellence, which I then share, because I feel that if it's in that order, it's helped me, it might help someone else. And my paranoia about crediting every little thing that I do, because it's just learning from others, and then just sharing what you've learned from others. It's passing that information on in a way that might support in a particular style, a particular way. But yeah, my lesson 1 compared to my lesson 100 in making those lessons, that is certainly an Austin's Butterfly. That is, when you look at the first draft and the first lesson that we put out there, it really is. One thing that I just wanted to add very quickly was within the whole ethos and culture and structures that we've talked about today, is how the authors join us in a role of participant as well, so everybody learns together. It's something which is really important to us, that we ask the author to introduce their book, but then we're all talking together, and so everybody's idea is of an equal, because that's how we will learn collaboratively, and the authors have been absolutely amazing in that, and what a community in terms of just offering that support at the level which helps our community grow. So just a massive thank you to everybody that's been involved with it as well.
Yeah, they just add such a richness, don't they, to what we're talking about, and it is an incredible opportunity, as you say, to actually engage with the author themselves. I think it was Mary Myatt said it's really nice to talk about their books, because she said you do it in such isolation that actually talking to professionals and how they're engaging with it at the moment and how they're interpreting it is really helpful. And for Mark McCourt, he said that it's been a little while since he wrote it. He wrote it in quite an intense period of time over a long weekend. So it also meant that he opened his book back up again and had another look and thought, okay, I wrote this a few years ago. What would my thoughts be about it now? And we asked the authors to, if there is anything to reflect on with that and to add with that, to share those as well. So what were your intentions initially, and how have you found that may have changed or adjusted, or what would you say about that possibly differently now? And it is just amazing to hear their reflections on that.
Yeah, I love that. And he starts the book by saying this book is immediately out of date the moment you're reading it, like straight away, because you only know what you know at a certain point of time. And like, you know, having looking at again 2 years later, because we are changing, you really do only know what you know at a given amount of time. And that's why I'm saying, like, the first 10 videos, or, you know, get 10% better. And in fact, 10% better is an exponential thing, we know as mathematicians, right? So it actually just does get the whole thing, like, your videos will get better, your remote teaching, your CPD. This is just the beginning. Like, the what's possible is, like, I've had this vision of teaching people. I've done CPD with schools in America, for example. So like, or I've beamed myself directly into someone who's just getting from their classroom to like a one-on-one intervention. So I work with the American teachers. So like, you're doing stuff across within your trust, across trusts, but it's just a matter of time. We'll be doing it across the country, because it's going to happen to a lot of us, and I'm beyond excited for what that's going to happen. And it's by putting out stuff there. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have some opportunities for people to join us internationally, because Kate Jones, she is not in the UK, so she's agreed to be one of our guest speakers at our book club. And we've got Doug Lamar, who hopefully will be joining us. I think his is June the 29th. So as you say, we can it just opens up a whole new door to the world, rather than just who can geographically and within reason travel to where you are at that time. And I think one of the other things is, you talked about music and picking up your guitar and posting those videos. And I think it was Ed Sheeran that said, look, you've probably got about 10,000 rubbish songs, but you've got to get them out the way. So you've got to write them, you've got to sing them, you've got to perform them. But then when they're gone, you can move on to the good stuff. So be kind to yourself when you're on that journey. But you do need to work through that. You do need to start as a novice again, and just be kind to yourself and let yourself improve and develop that way. You know, we're trying to hopefully make our book club more portable as well. So one of the projects we're going to be looking at is turning it into a podcast, so that you don't have to sit and watch the recording, but you can actually listen to it when you're going about other things as well. Because I love listening to podcasts. Craig Barton is one of my absolute favourites. It's always listening to his latest one, because I can listen to it wherever I am doing whatever I am. So that's one of the next things that we're working on with our project. Now it's on the website. We'll be looking at turning it into podcasts as well. I just got to try and get my husband to do the jingle. So he's a primary maths teacher, but he's a jazz sax player as well. So I've said to him, look, so I don't have to worry about royalties or anything, I need you to compose me a jingle.
Well, you've got good news, because you got your first podcast episode here. I'll just turn this one into an audio one as well. So, because there's no
brilliant.
Yeah, there's no like screen sharing or visual stuff, so this will work really good on audio anyway. So this is your first like trial episode or whatever you want to call it. It's there's a record of it.
Our first draft of the butterfly.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah,
Yes.
That's the most exciting one. And talking about like all these old videos, I like to keep them there. It's like when you look back and you say, wow, that's you've changed so much. And it's just good to self-reflect. And you know, you've been doing that for a few months, but when it starts like looking at it a few years later, you're like, wow, that is so different. And you've had this amazing feeling, like this is what monitored self-development looks like really, really precise. This is how you've changed. And at every point in your development, just accepting that you only know what you know. You are where you are at that moment in time, and it's fine. That's growth, professional and personal.
We all do the best we can at the time. It's just and then the next day we learn something new. So we're continually improving. It's one of the benefits, and also one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, with a role such as teaching and in education, especially with being online for you, being able to develop that relationship with the learner remotely. That's a completely different skill. Reading a room when you're not physically in the same room as other people. I think those are areas for us all to try and share expertise in and experience in, so we can all get better at that, especially if it can be a little bit challenging at some point, or you're trying to just navigate some careful politics, or just being aware of a change in a dynamic if you're working with people you haven't worked with before. And if you're trying to help to support students with something that they're finding pretty frustrating at the time, that must have been, you've had more time to be able to craft and sculpt your expertise in that area than the rest of us. I think we've got an awful lot to learn from what you've been doing up until now.
Yeah, I'd love to share that actually, because I have like nearly 25 individual tutees, and I've only met one of them in person, and only that because their parents are into music and I play an open mic next to where they live, so they just come over. That's the only time I meet my tutee in person. And like most of a lot of them are just like in Singapore or Seoul or Western California or something, and then when you become expert at something, you forget what it is to be a novice. So I'm really thinking back. It is a very specific skill set in reading someone online and forming rapport with them, getting to know them, and forming that relationship that you would normally do in person. And there's definitely a process in that. And it's 100% possible because you've been doing that with your colleagues. We're doing it right now. We don't actually know. This is the first time we're meeting, or we're not meeting. I don't know. I don't even know how to call it. But it's there's definitely a skill set. It's about you get more tuned with this non-verbal communication style, and you know all the things, but you just kind of adapt it to this two-dimensional canvas, and you can get to read when, because my passion is teaching children who are fairly low attaining, sometimes dyscalculia or special needs. So Mark McCourt says about role modeling this method selection, and I have like a couple of students who have special needs, and they're unable to regulate their kind of emotions. And in one case, one child sees the problem and nearly just screams from maths anxiety. And that's the correct response actually in some ways, because when your body becomes tense, then it has to release that tension, and that's anxiety. And then you've got to deal with these situations, calm people down with your presence, with reading it, with so there's a whole bunch of really complicated stuff, but I'd love to share that stuff. And this obviously this podcast is not about me, but whenever, and so the opportunity comes, for me, I've been waiting for these moments for people to just kind of ask and get into it. But it's I've been trying to convince parents and other tutors that all of this is possible, very possible online. You can form relationships, you can manage tricky situations, you can manage really tricky situations where the child might just want to switch off from you completely. Well, you end the call, just wait another 10 minutes for things to calm down, or as if you might not call, but you have that kind of option that you wouldn't get in person, because you're there and they're there. So yes, there's ways around all of these complicated things that there's a lot more possible online.
I can hear that actually. Something I hadn't appreciated is it's easier not to get swept up with the emotions of the person you're in the same room as if you are working remotely. So it might be easier to actually take a step back, and not potentially at times, I think if I'm trying to organize my children, I can get a little bit swept up and I can react rather than respond. But when you're working virtually, I suppose it can be easier then to give yourself an opportunity to respond and think about how to manage the situation, especially with maths anxiety. And I think that's one of the things to be acutely aware of. And when we are maths teachers and we're passionate about our subject, forget what it's like if you find it hard, and in finding it hard you think you're failing at it, whereas actually finding it hard is what maths is all about most of the time. And it's just that constant getting back up onto your bike, even when you've fallen off, and having another go. And it's just another thing to be aware of. But if you've been able to do it remotely, so others can learn from that, and we can all look at how to get better at that as well. So no, it's maths anxiety. I think it's absolutely right that it's being right and proper. It's being discussed more at the moment. I mean, I've got personal experience of that with my daughter. She is bright, she is able, she is intelligent, but when she was younger, she thought that if she got something wrong, she'd failed, like she should already know it. I think maybe she was in year 2, and if she got a question wrong, she would get upset and hide under the table because she felt she'd failed in not knowing what to do. So we helped her understand that by giving her a flute and helping her to learn an instrument, because nobody is expected to be able to play an instrument as soon as they're born. It's not something you'd expect them to have innately. And I think an appreciation and understanding of that is important for everybody. Some of our brightest higher attainers in mathematics have a huge amount of maths anxiety because they think they've got to get it right all the time. And as you said yourself, you can actually really focus and laser in on the emotions of the person on the other side of the screen to see what the triggers are a little bit more than maybe if you're in a busy area where there's a lot of noise. When it's just the two of you, there is no noise. So no, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're coming up to an hour and a half. I could chat for another hour and a half if I'm honest.
Sorry.
But yeah, people have a place to go, lunch to do, etc. And the Twitter chat's gone a little quiet, so I'm guessing it's kind of heading towards a natural close anyway. Is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet in sort of on our sort of closing minutes? Anything that comes up?
Just a massive thank you for having us on and for allowing us to have our first draft of that Austin's Butterfly. It's something that we all learn from and we'll get better with, and hopefully that's been useful for others. And yeah, any sort of feedback in that, always very grateful. Just thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and just listening to our ideas and facilitating them. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing this is for my own CPD. I mean, I'm just like 2 expert maths teachers. And in your very spirit of sharing that CPD, that's the whole idea, that, I get my CPD from you. We get to converse each other as colleagues and get Twitter. The reason I like this live thing is there's lots of us on Twitter, so it's about the conversation between us, between Twitter and us, and I'm experimenting with this kind of new format of doing things, and so thank you, for coming along. I'm sure this is not the last of it, so I tend to keep these going all the way through for as long as people want it. Thank you again to all our participants on Twitter for taking part, and Facebook, YouTube, etc. The recording will be there. I know the question keeps coming up about the various links you have for your videos, so we'll come up with something on Twitter and put it up as a package. I'll be back live streaming again next Saturday, and the one after we already got most of February sorted. Yeah, so we'll wrap it up there. What I'll do now is I'll just stop streaming and then we can just chat very quickly for a little bit and then we can finish up there. So, yeah, thank you all again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye for now.